Hello, welcome to Books and Brews,
the place where beer and literature meet.
with your host, the seer of the beer, Chris Powell.
And Laura Vosica, author of the Bluebells Chronicles.
Each month, we invite a guest author to read their works and talk about writing while sipping a beer specially paired to their work. This month's guest is Clay Gilbert. So sit back,
Pop a cold one,
and dive into some books
and brews. Welcome to episode number 73 of Books and Brews with Clay Gilbert. So, Laura, what have you been doing this month?
Well,
other than getting crushed?
Well, I did not get crushed, and that's the good news. It's been good news all around this month because we had two sets of new twins, and lambs, right? Twin lambs. That I'm glad you corrected it.
Well, yeah.
That would be quite amazing.
It'd get its own very interesting reaction from the population.
So that was really wonderful. And then we had a single lamb. So we've had 5 lambs, I think, in this past month.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. I keep saying the lambs or the sheep are being reproducing like rabbits, and the rabbits are reproducing like, I don't know, stones. I have got the only rabbits in the world who won't reproduce, and I have to figure that out. Yeah,
well, and the stereotype, I guess.
Right. They're totally blowing that. So my other good news is that when I intercepted a dog fight, I only got bitten on the arm. Could have been a lot worse. And then
these weren't between World War II biplanes or World War I biplanes?
No. We got a second big white dog, and they were best of friends until all of a sudden they weren't. And I think they started fighting over food. But then the third time it happened, I had specifically taken food out of their pasture before I let them together again. And one of them went trotting over to where the food had been. And what I think happened was he saw it wasn't there, and so he attacked the other one, assuming that dog had taken it. And boy, it's something else to see your 2 adorable fluffball dogs turn into killing machines. It was pretty scary.
Speaking of killing machines, didn't you have fun with the UTV?
Yeah. That's my other good news. I'm alive. By all rights. Yeah, I think I mentioned this to you online, Clay. I was kind of, not that I'm ever happy someone gets sick, but it turned out to be very convenient because I came that close to having a UTV, or what they call a side-by-side here in Tennessee, roll backwards over me. And it would have been closed casket. It would have been pretty awful. And so somehow I jumped out of the way. 1 second I saw it coming toward me, and the next second I was next to it, landing on my back in a pile of brush. So
that's like I said to you on Facebook. I think somebody was looking out for you.
Right. I really do feel like angels have been working overtime, because a couple weeks before the dog fight, I was run over literally by a ram, just knocked me flat on my back. Ran from my feet right up over my face, and I have no idea how I wasn't hurt in that either. So, yeah.
After all that fun, did you get a chance to read anything this month?
Well, I sort of. I still am officially saying I'm reading In Satan's Shadow by John Anthony Miller, who I'm hoping will be on our program. And then I am officially starting on Wildlife, the MISS Adventures, I think it's of a Cosmo Bachelor, by last month's guest, Michael Modzelewski. So he very kindly sent this to me from the cruise ship he's now on, where he is the Alaskan naturalist, and I'm looking forward to reading that. How about you?
Well, I've been getting a chance to read a couple of things. One was this interesting book called Unshrunk, which was a medical memoir from a woman who, starting as a teenager, was on a tremendous variety of psychiatric drugs and ended up almost committing suicide and many other things before she finally weaned herself from all of these drugs. And this is then kind of the journey of her struggle, and then how she transcended it and helps other people get off of these meds as well. And it kind of echoes a lot of what we've seen with a number of medicines and therapies that seem to have more downside than they have upside, if they have any upside. So, that was very interesting. And then because I was running out of books on my trip that I was reading this on, I went to the bookstore and got a book from Nassim Taleb called Anti-Fragile, following up his book on black swans, which is very interesting. And then also, of course, I had to get another Lee Child book about Jack Reacher called Make Me, and I'm reading that book now as well.
You've been busy.
Yes.
So
who's our guest this month? I'm going to go out again on a limb and say that this guest is probably interesting.
Yes, because when I ask, are you an interesting guest? And they say, well, honestly, no, I don't have them on. So, right. And you thought it was dumb luck. So we have actually coming from our neck of the woods, and we've had a few from the Knoxville area lately. We have Clay Gilbert. He has always believed in the power of the imagination to dissolve differences and forge connections between people. Since 2013, he has published 13 novels in genres ranging from science fiction and horror to young adult dystopia and urban fantasy. His works include the science fiction series Children of Evohe. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Evohe. It's close enough. Close enough. It's a Greek word. Yeah, it's Evohe.
Evohe, which began in 2013 with Annah and the Children of Evohe, as well as the horror novel Dark Road to Paradise and the dark fantasy novel Pearl, a monster story, which is what we will be hearing from today. Clay lives and works in Knoxville, Tennessee, where his cat Rosalind insists on quality checking each new book.
Or jump up in here in my lap and make an appearance on camera. I wouldn't be surprised. She likes to do that.
I look forward to it. We used to sometimes have our dog come and stroll behind and see what we're up to while we're filming the program here. But she's out in the garden now, pushing up daisies. Well, she would be if I ever planted them.
Right. So she's pushing up squash, I think, at this point.
Well, I didn't plant food over her. I'm only going to plant flowers over her. But anyway, welcome, Clay. And we are ready for the first cocktail.
Yes, indeed. So I was inspired by your wonderful character, Pearl, in the first reading. And this is actually a cocktail called the Pearl Essence. So we're going to start with some gin, because why wouldn't you start with gin for something that is the essence of a young lady named Pearl? And we start with about an ounce and a half of gin.
Nobody would let her drink, but we'll let that pass.
Right. Yes. So we're starting off with just about a jigger full of gin for each drink. And then we put in one of my favorite liqueurs, which is elderflower liqueur, Saint Germain. So that has a wonderful contrasting flavor with the gin and with a number of other wonderful things we're going to be putting in there. Then we bring in some fresh lemon juice.
Nice.
And that's going in. And then one of the very interesting liqueurs that I also like working with is Luxardo. It's a cherry liqueur, but we're only going to be putting in just about a 1/4 ounce for each drink, because it's a very, wonderfully strong tasting cherry. So we don't want to necessarily have too much of it. And then we get some orange bitters, just a dash for each drink. And we're going to shake this in order to get everything nicely mixed, because everything in a bar has to be shaken. Otherwise, it doesn't sound like you're in a bar. And then we're going to put this in a champagne flute glass, which I'm going to kind of enhance a little by putting some pearls, some edible pearls in the glass. We're then going to strain the drink from the shaker into the champagne flute with the nice floating pearls in it. And then we're going to finish that with just a little bit of Prosecco for a little bit of effervescence. Because if you have a champagne flute, you should have some effervescence. So here we have the Pearl Essence for your first reading.
And you can see the pearls in the bottom
of the glass.
So cheers.
Cheers.
I like them. I think a lot of times I don't care for anything with the Prosecco in it. It's a little too sparkly for me, too bubbly. But this is a nice combination. And I wouldn't
Yes.
necessarily have expected this taste from the things you put in. I expected something heavier tasting.
Yeah, and it's got a very nice spring-like, kind of a flavor like you might have on a veranda of a very, interesting party.
So
Great.
we are ready for reading number 1.
All right. So I think I'll just start in from the beginning of the reading, and y'all can ask questions when it's done. Pearl wasn't scared of sleeping in the woods alone. As long as all she saw were animals, she'd be just fine. Pearl wasn't scared of any wild animals. They couldn't do anything to hurt her. Neither could men with dogs. They'd tried, too. Men with guns, that was something different. But for a whole year now, they'd stayed away from her, except in her nightmares. For a year, everyone had stayed away from her. That was how she liked it. Now all that was changing in just one day. She didn't like changes much. Pearl looked at the calendar she'd hung with a hammer and nail on the cabin's wall. The wall was pretty solid, but she was strong. October 1st, 2025, the calendar said. Against the wall, beneath the calendar, there was a stack of ones just like it. Only the years were any different. She was especially glad October's picture hadn't changed from the year before. It made her smile. The picture she liked so much was a composite design featuring a big tree with mostly barren branches, a huge jack-o'-lantern stuck smack onto an orange sky. October skies in pictures she had decided were nothing but sunsets. And cartoon renditions of Frankenstein's monster, the Wolfman, and Dracula. Those made her smile even more. She loved monsters. And why shouldn't she? People were always telling her she was one. They always said that like it was a bad thing. Only one person ever told her anything different, and he was gone now. The people at the lab never seemed to care much about Pearl for herself. Never even cared about me enough to give me a name, she thought. Dr. Steve did that. Every time someone seemed to care about Pearl for herself, and she could count every one of those on the fingers of one hand without even using up all the fingers, they ended up going away, and she was left alone with the ones who didn't care.
Very nice. So 13 novels in 13 years, that's very productive. What is your work schedule like?
I work from about 9 o'clock in the morning until about, well, there's the polite answer and the real answer. The polite answer is I work from 9 until 6, but the real answer is it usually ends up being 9 or 10 at night. I'm a night owl. I stay up pretty late. So if I'm on a deadline, sometimes I'll stay up past midnight till 2 or so if there's stuff that really needs to be hammered out. But my average work schedule is, as I described, from about 9 till about 10 o'clock.
Okay.
Sounds like someone else I know.
9 in the morning until 10 at night.
Yep.
Do you have a day job or it's all writing?
No. My first 2 novels were published in 2013. And back when those were first published, I still had a day job. I had 2. I was working part-time teaching and part-time at a call center. And the call center I was working at was pretty laid back in terms of how many calls we got during the day. I was working for Jewelry Television. It's headquartered in Knoxville. And there, at the time, we'd only get about 3 or 4 hours worth of phone calls, and I'd be there for 8 hours. So there were 4 hours there at work when I could write. I wrote the entire first draft of my novel, Annah and the Children of Evohe, in the Jewelry Television call center between phone calls, longhand in a notebook, and I'd come home at night and type it up. Fortunately, by the time I wrote Pearl, I was doing this full time. It was a lot more laid back. It's a lot more laid back to be able to sit here at home and work from home, determine my own hours and that sort of thing.
Right.
But that's not the reality of the way things were when I
Right.
started.
But I think it also takes a lot of self-discipline. I think when you've got the whole day free, it becomes very easy to go, I've got all day. So to have that kind of focus and discipline, that's a huge deal. Now, I was curious, given that you write in all of these genres, and yet there's a similarity to all of them in that they're all kind of focusing on kind of the dark, the fantasy, the science fiction, not realistic, like say historical fiction that's based in reality.
Mm-hmm.
What draws you to that, or what do you think draws readers to those themes?
Well, for me, it was always what I liked to read. When I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
I read fantasy and horror and science fiction. And when I do appearances at conventions and people ask me, what's your advice for a beginning writer? I'd say, first of all, read a lot in a lot of different genres. But in terms of when you're starting out as a writer, write what you like to read. And so for me, when I started writing, naturally it was the sort of thing I like to read. Now, in terms of why I'm drawn to that area as a reader, I've never really enjoyed reading about the world right outside my window. I enjoy, I don't know, things that are indicative of the imagination, things that open my mind to different worlds. Now, as a reader, I don't only just read fantasy, science fiction, and horror, but even the non-genre stuff that I read tends to be a little bit, shall we say, quirky. I mean, in terms of non-genre fiction, one of my favorite authors is John Irving, who wrote The World According to Garp and Hotel New Hampshire. And even though Irving writes about the world outside our window, he tends to do it in a quirky fashion. There's always something either odd about his main characters, odd about his settings, or odd about the quirky humor with which he often peppers his stories. So
Right.
I like things to be a little left of center. And I find that, coming back to my own work, and why I like to read genre fiction, I find that you can confront tricky issues, tricky societal issues in genre fiction with an impunity that you're not allowed to if you are writing about the real world in a recognizable way.
Right. I think that's an excellent point.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I think of writers that I really enjoy, like classic writers like Robert Hunt, who wrote Stranded in Strange Land and Starship Troopers. Both of those books take on social issues, and they do it from the standpoint of, in the case of Stranger, it's this guy, Valentine Michael Smith, who's a human, but he was born and raised in a Martian colony. So he has the perspective of a Martian, even though he's human. And that colors his whole views on Earth. It allows Heinlein to criticize certain aspects of human culture that he wrote the book in the mid-60s. There was a lot to criticize.
Right.
So anyway, I think that's the value in genre fiction. Some people might enjoy writing genre fiction as an escape, but I don't see it that way. I see it as a way to confront human issues, confront our real world, but to do it in a way that maybe doesn't make the reader feel confronted.
Right, because to them it's a foreign world, so they're not maybe taking it personally. And
Right.
One thing I have found, I had a very interesting comment on my first book from somebody who does not see the world the same way I do at all. We're polar opposites in how we view this country, this world, this life. And she, of all people, read my book and said, I need to be more like Neil. Now, Neil's the one who probably sees life more like me and completely differently from her. But it kind of was, I mean, I knew, but it was the light bulb going on that when you try and discuss a topic with people, the walls go up. They're like,
Yeah.
I believe this, you believe that. There is no meeting of the minds. But when they're reading a story, it's totally different. So I'm curious, do you find any different, do you attack writing different genres differently, or is it kind of all the same technique, all the same way of going about it?
It's pretty much all the same ways of going about it. The only thing that would be any different is depending on the specific genre. I mean, if I'm writing dark fantasy or horror, then naturally you're going for creating certain different moods than if I were writing space fantasy or urban fantasy or something like that. I'm not going necessarily for a frightening mood or something like that.
Yeah.
But,
Now, one thing that I have found when I was deep in writing my novels, they're set in largely in medieval Scotland, also modern Scotland, because it's time travel. But when I was just deep into it, my mind, it's a weird feeling. It's like you're in that space. You start to have the emotions almost. How does writing dark fantasy and horror, I mean, does that kind of get into your mind that way, or how do you deal with that?
well, it's interesting that you bring it up that way. Best way to answer this, I write the same type of horror that I enjoy watching or reading, which tends to be supernatural horror with creatures and monsters, and not so much like psychopathic killer, violence type stuff. I mean, like I've written 2 books about vampires. They're not Twilighty sort of urban fantasy romance vampires, even though there's romance in both of those books. The focus is more on the horror aspects and on what it would be like to be a living creature that feeds on human blood. It used to be a human. So the horror element is tempered with humanity. And I would say that that's certainly true of both the vampire books. Even though Pearl and its sequel, Pearl of the Shadows, are technically dark fantasy, one of my friends described them as being horror adjacent, and I would definitely agree with that. I mean, the books are about monsters. I mean, Pearl and her people, the Mountain Walkers, are, in the view of a lot of humans, they're monsters because they change shape and they have fangs and they have pointy claw fingernails. But they're also very human. I mean, that's one of the reasons Pearl is a child in the first book. I got to thinking about wanting to write a monster book because I've always loved monsters. But the type of monsters that I tend to enjoy are like Frankenstein, the Wolfman. In the case of Pearl, I wanted to write a sympathetic monster, and the best way to do that was to have a child. A 10-year-old girl who shoots a fish out of water. She's clearly, when the reader meets her at the beginning of the book, she's in this lab. She's clearly not where she belongs. Kind of spoiling the second book. In the second book, you get to see her amongst her actual people, and when you have the context for her people, the mountain walkers, they don't seem like monsters so much anymore.
I had a simple but very important question. So, like when you're writing about vampires and monsters, can you do that at 9 a.m. when the sun's coming through the window and you're having your orange juice and your oatmeal?
I can write whatever at any time. That's another thing I tend to tell people on panels about writing is that you got to train yourself to be able to write what you need to write at any time. Train yourself to be able to put your fingers to the keyboard and get the words to come out any time that you put your backside to the chair.
That's good advice.
That's a process.
I did want to ask about the Holler-Bairnies. What are they, and where did you get the story from?
Well, that story is a Appalachian myth of some sort, some origin. I'm not really sure about the academic origin of that. The term itself is Scottish, and it means children of the Holler. And I was looking for an Appalachian Smoky Mountain myth that would fit with the kind of creature being. It seems mean to call her a creature. She's a being, but the kind of being that Pearl is, and that her species would have been. And I did, so I wanted to root it in something that was recognizable, but I also wanted to tie them in a larger way into all the myths of dwarves and things like that we have folk tales about, implying that maybe her people, the Mountain Walkers, were the origin for perhaps this Scotch-Irish Holler-Bairnie idea, but also for dwarves and that sort of thing, that they were archetypal. So I made up the Mountain Walker bit, but the Holler-Bairnie word and that sort of part of it came from Appalachian mythology, and actually was a suggestion of a friend of mine, whose dad sadly has passed away now, but his dad was big into Appalachian mythology and knew a bit more about it even than I did. So
I was trying to find more information about Holler-Bairnies, and I could not find anything online at all. And so I didn't know if they typically had another name, because usually I can find anything if I look hard enough. And this, I was turning up nothing. I was turning up definitions of what the hollers are and what a bairn is, maybe, but not a Holler-Bairnie. So I was kind of frustrated with that.
The clearest explanation of that came orally to me from my friend's father, and he had heard it orally from some relatives, from his grandmother. So that was a case of oral transmission of mythology. Now, the second Pearl book, the one I'm currently working on, Pearl of the Shadows, actually has a mythological figure in it, 2 mythological figures in it that you can actually look up, and I promise you there will be photographic and several textual websites referencing them. So one of them is Spearfinger. She's a creature of Cherokee Indian mythology origin who lives in the woods, and she keeps one of her fingers sharp because she eats the livers of children. And she's
charming.
Well, who wouldn't, really? You know,
she's the main villain of the second book, or the main adversary of the second book. And then there's a creature called Stone Man, who is supposed to be the arch rival of Spearfinger. So I stuck him in there because I figured my good guys needed some help.
We need to move on to drink number 2.
yes, indeed. And so I was taken by the story of the rabbit and Pearl in reading number 2. And so, you know, and again, kind of thinking of spring cocktails and summer cocktails and things like that, that might go, I have a rabbit's garden cocktail to go along with your reading as the rabbit is being dealt with for dinner. Yes. And so we start with about 1.5 ounces of vodka, and then we add some wonderful fresh cucumber juice that's been freshly juiced, and some fresh lemon juice again. Also some honey syrup, which is essentially 1-to-1 honey and water, heated over a stove, so it kind of mixes well.
That sounds delicious.
Yes, and then we muddle some mint leaves in the bottom of the shaker with some ice, and we're ready to shake again. And I have put also the kind of very secret ingredient here is homemade celery bitters. So what we did, we made some, you know, putting some celery, some vodka, some water, gentian root, coriander, cinnamon, and a few other little tidbits into a blender, blended it all up, and then forced it through some cheesecloth in order to get some fresh celery bitters. And it has this wonderful bouquet. I mean, celery itself has a wonderful, you know, odor all by itself. And then when you mix in these other things, so celery bitters is also in this as well. And we'll shake this up. And then we, if the rest of my highball glasses were not in the dishwasher, I would be using a highball glass. But I will put some ice in a taller glass, which happens to have some mint in the bottom of it. This is actually fresh grown peppermint that we have from our garden. And we will then strain this drink into the ice and mint. And I can already smell the wonderful bouquet of the cucumber and the celery and everything like that, but also the backdrop of the, you know, the nice drink that we have. So here we have the rabbit's garden. I think you can see there. So it's got some mint going on in it and other things. And cheers.
Cheers. So this is the one with cucumber, right? That's got a stronger flavor than I expected, but very good. This is perfect for hot summer day.
Yes.
Sounds like
it. Yeah. I like this better than the other one, and I like the other one. So
Here's to reading number 2.
Right. Go ahead. Reading number 2.
All right. Pearl's stomach clenched, and all her thoughts of getting a closer look at the man who lived in the house next door vanished with the sudden realization that it had been 2 days since she had anything to eat. No, mister, she thought. You go on back inside. They'll need you out here. More important to get me some dinner. She wished the power in the cabin was hooked up so she could cook a meal instead of having to chase down animals in the dark for her dinner, like she was some kind of animal herself. She'd never cooked a meal, but she'd watched people cook online, and she was pretty sure she could do it if she had the right stuff to do it with. She wasn't an animal, even if some of the mean white coats back in the bad place sometimes said she was. No, not an animal, the monster voice inside her echoed. But you're not like that man over there either. Just like I wasn't like Dr. Steve, she told the voice. And he wasn't like me, but he liked me anyway. So where is he now? The monster voice asked. You shush, she told it. Pearl hated the monster voice sometimes. She couldn't remember a time when she hadn't heard it. She'd heard it before she heard any voices from outside, and she heard it when all the voices from the world outside herself were quiet. Most of the time it was smarter, though. It was smarter than she was, though, and it kept her safe. You always telling me I'm strong, Pearl whispered out loud to the monster voice. Maybe he'll think so, too. The monster voice did hush up after that, but Pearl wasn't sure whether it was because it agreed with her or because it didn't think arguing was worth the trouble. She crouched down and tiptoed closer to the house, hoping that between the darkness of nighttime and the darkness of her skin, it'd be harder for the stranger man to see her. Don't want him to see me at all, she thought. Not like this. I'm sweaty and dirty, and I know I smell bad. Need a bath. Clean clothes, too. She wanted to know more about the stranger man, but now she smelled the rabbit's scent on the air, and she was hungry. She crouched lower, hoping the tall grass would hide her from the stranger man, and got a fix on the rabbit's eyes. She saw them shifting in the dark the way she knew her own eyes did, from having seen them in mirrors a time or two back in the bad place. A small orange cat darted through the grass between Pearl and the rabbit, but she kept her eyes locked on the rabbit. Shoo, kitty, Pearl thought. You get on out of here. She knew the cat wasn't going to read her mind, though. The sound had its own effect on the rabbit. The animal froze in place and pricked up its ears. Pearl knew she wasn't allowed to eat cats, dogs, or anything like that. That was one of the first things the monster voice ever told her. They didn't smell right, didn't seem right for eating. They're animals, the monster voice said, but they've lost the smell of the wild, the sense of the wild. An animal in the wild knows to run from the hunt, knows to stay away from people, any people, and it knows how to use its claws and teeth to fight. Cats and dogs kept as companions and bred as companions are off limits, the monster voice had told her, as is anything else that does not have the smell of the wild. That is the law. The cat was gone. Pearl sprang for the rabbit, catching it and lifting it off the ground in one motion. She sank her teeth deep into its neck, and when she did, it screamed. No, no, she thought, didn't expect that. She silenced it with a twist of her hands and the snapping of bone.
That's a very good image, and it's really going to play into, I think, the next reading too. Now, Pearl, I like how at the end of chapter 1, because I read part of it online, I actually usually ask authors to send me a book, even if it's by PDF, just because I feel like I can do a better interview that way. But life has been so crazy dodging UTVs and fighting dogs that I just didn't this time. But one of the things I really like about her, what is so fascinating, she's a monster, if you want to put air quotes on that. She's apparently one of these Holler-Bairnies or mountain walkers, right? Mm-hmm. And yet she's got this wisdom to her. She thinks at the end of chapter 1, okay, bad things happen at that lab, but a lot of really good things happen too. I learned to read. I learned to talk, I learned to use, I think, the internet she's using, and just absorbing all this knowledge. And I wanted to know, was wisdom, is that like part of the trait that Holler-Bairnie has in lore? Or is it something she learned in the lab or from Dr. Steve, or is it just her?
It's part of her species. She's a mountain walker. They were I mean, you're going to find out later on that they were the basis for the Appalachian Holler-Bairnie mythology, and like I said earlier, they were also the basis for the idea of dwarves and some of the other cultural myths that we have. So, as far as what Pearl calls the monster voice, the thing that she hears in her head, she doesn't know what it is, what it comes from, where it comes from. She just knows she's always heard it, and that it functions as kind of a conscience and kind of keeps her out of trouble. Now, in Pearl of the Shadows, the book I'm writing now, which I'm currently going through the process of revising and editing based on comments from my editor right now. But in that second book, I go into more about what the monster voice is, what its origins are, because that book deals with Pearl encountering an enclave of her own people who are located inside a mountain in the Smoky Mountains. And she goes there, and she and the man who ends up being her adoptive father, her adoptive human father, they both go to this enclave of mountain walkers, and you learn a lot more about their culture, including eventually where the monster voice came from. But I don't really tell you in this book because Pearl doesn't know.
Right.
I was just more impressed by the fact that she could catch a rabbit on the fly. We can't catch rabbits when we're sticking our hands inside of one of the cages.
Right, and they can't go anywhere.
Right.
we need to hire Pearl as our farmhand.
Yes.
Well, I think the mountain walkers probably have a little bit more advanced reflexes than humans do. I mean,
blast.
That's
the reason we need one helping us. You know,
you haven't read that. I am going to send you the book, so you'll get a chance to read the whole thing. But she actually takes on a bear at one point.
Oh wow, we need her.
Yes,
yeah.
The rabbit is one thing, but she outruns a bear at one point.
Mm-hmm. Oh well, I don't want her to outrun it because then it catches me.
That's right. Yes, you know.
True. Well, she was stopping someone. I'm spoiling things, but she was saving someone else from potentially a close encounter with that bear.
You know, it's like that guideline that says, I don't need to outrun the bear, I just need to outrun you.
Right, right. So we are ready for not book 3, drink 3.
Well, which may have its own book. So this cocktail was actually inspired by Holler-Bairnies. And so I was actually able to find on Microsoft Copilot some information on Holler-Bairnies and the fact that there was a cocktail that could actually be inspired somewhat by them. Which
nice.
This is called the Appalachian Holler cocktail, and we're going to start, because we are in the Appalachians, we're going to start with some bourbon. Then we're going to add some very interesting things to this, and it's going to be, I think, pretty fun to try this particular cocktail when we're done. So we start with about 1.5 ounces of bourbon, and then, if we're lucky, we've actually made this apple cider ourselves. But in this case, we didn't, because we didn't have some apples to make it from. But we're going to stick in some apple cider along with the bourbon. So again, that's going to have a very, I think, Appalachian kind of backdrop to it.
Yeah.
And then it gets even more exciting. This is homemade blackberry syrup. This was made just today. And we're going to stick in, yes, about 1 ounce of that. It's been strained through cheesecloth after it was boiled. It's made a little bit like cranberry sauce in that you put about equal parts sugar, water, and blackberries in a pan and boil it up, and then you strain it through some cheesecloth when you're done. And then now we're going to add some lemon juice, give it a little bit of zip, given all that fruit flavor, and a little bit, just a dash, of Angostura bitters. And we're going to then shake this up with some ice. Oh, this is already, you could just smell the wonderful bouquet of this cocktail already. And I'm going to add some ice to some glasses. We're going to strain that into the glass. You can just see the wonderful color coming from the blackberry syrup coming through this. And then just for a last little bit, we're going to get some very fine ginger ale and throw this on the top. Give it a little bit of sparkle and a little bit of that extra flavor of the gin, or excuse me, of the ginger, as well as the bourbon that's in there. So here we have a cocktail. It doesn't quite look like a bourbon cocktail, and it's got such a wonderful bouquet in it. And cheers!
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 That's very I'd say bright.
Very bright and very floral, I think,
right,
too.
Right. That's another one. You hit it out of the ballpark this time.
So let's hear about our Holler-Bairnies.
Yep, go ahead. Reading number 3.
All right. Chris, I'm glad you were able to turn up something about the Holler-Bairnies. Something actually tangible written about them.
Yes, let alone get inspired, to have a cocktail related to them.
Yep, that's good too. All right. The Holler-Bairnies, an Appalachian folk term Matt knew, meant children of the mountains, though no one old enough to know the term we use so fancified a phrase. Seemed to fall through the cracks where the books and TV shows were concerned, but Matt remembered his great-grandma telling him about them one time when he was a little boy, hungry for every scrap of that kind of thing he could get hold of. They's all colors, just like us. Some of them's black as soot, some of them's white as ash, some of them's red as fire. Though more polite folk won't think it's right for me to use words like that to describe folks that generally look like you and me. But they're not like us, are they? Matt looked up at the old woman, who sometimes seemed as full of mysteries herself as was anything in the world. Her mother had been a medicine woman of the Cherokee, and she'd taught his great-grandma, who he and his cousins had called Mama Leotie, everything from how to brew a tea to cure allergies or a cold, to how to smell a storm coming on a summer wind. Not exactly, Mama Leotie had said with a smile. They's like enough. They eat and sleep and breathe like we do, and I hear tell they love and dream and need like we do too. I got a visitor on my lap. Rosalind decided she's going to come visit. She's not on camera, but she's here.
Oh, you should lift her up and let us see her. Or does she not like that?
Well, she's not going to like the lifting up so much. Here, baby, come here. She doesn't like it. She's going to get down now.
Oh, well.
Bothering her too much. She likes to do what she wants to do. She gets up here and interferes with whatever's going on with me, makes me pay attention to her, but she doesn't like being handled too much.
That's like what our dog, well, she loved being petted, but
oh yeah, Rosalind does too. She's all about the pets, and she likes to, if she's sitting in my lap, she likes for me to kiss the top of her head. She'll jump up here just for me to kiss the top of her head, and then she'll jump back down. But the whole manhandling and being picked up off the floor and that kind of thing, she doesn't like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to this. They's like enough. They eat and sleep and breathe like we do, and I hear tell they love and dream and need like we do too. What do they need, Mama Leotie? He had asked. What do they do? Where do they even come from? Mama Leotie laughed. Now I know how my mother must have felt when I was your age. Well, some folks say they came from inside the mountains themselves. Some of my kin, back a good ways, came from Germany, and there's legends there about folks living in the mountains too, some called dwarves, and some called Svartalfar or Dockofar. Both of those words mean dark elves, basically, and while the Holler-Bairnies aren't always said to be dark-skinned, more than a fair few of them are supposed to be. Matt didn't know what to say to that, so he went back to the questions he'd asked that Mama Leotie hadn't gotten around to yet. But what do they do? What are they for? I heard you the first time, child, Mama Leotie said. Why is it that when people see or hear of folk they don't understand, they spend so much time asking what they're for? when most times they ain't figured that out about themselves yet. Don't know, he had said. Well, if you ever do find out, come back here and tell old Mama Leotie, will you? She laughed, and then her face turned serious again. Matt did too. He was fascinated. As far as the Holler-Bairnies go, they live in the mountains and under them, in the high places and the deep places of the earth. They stick together, but their numbers are shrinking. Why? Matt had asked. So many questions, child, Mama Leotie said. No one's precisely sure as far as I know. My people have always said that they keep the rhythms of the wild places of the world, but they watch over the fires that burn in the heart of the mountain and make sure no one creature of the earth grows too plentiful and threatens to wipe out the balance of life. But who knows if that is so? My people know only that we have always seen them in the world, and that we see them now in fewer numbers than we once did. Matt remembered how Mama Leotie's words sent a chill down his spine and a stab in his gut, as if hearing what was said was poisoning him with fear. Make sure no one creature of the earth grows too plentiful. He didn't like the sound of that, not one bit. Does that mean people too? He had asked. Would these Holler-Bairnies kill people? Mama Leotie's eyes were full of sympathy, but her expression was grave. It is the task of the shepherd to guard the safety of the flock. Might it not also be the task of the wolf to make sure the world is not overrun with sheep, to eat away every green spot on the earth with their grazing? That was a scary idea to him, but it made a crazy kind of sense, too. Maybe some of these folk are shepherds, and some of them are wolves, Mama Leotie had said with a smile. A cold chill ran through Matt at the memory of these last words, spoken decades ago now, but right now, clear as a blue sky. Matt thought again of the little girl with dark skin, silver eyes, and bloodstained mouth. Which one is she? He wondered. And where did she go?
That's a profound concept, that we need to keep things in balance, and sometimes the wolf is going to kill the sheep because they're overgrazing or whatever. But very disturbing when he thinks maybe these Holler-Bairnies are going to come after him. And yet, in part of this whole chapter, the bigger part of this reading, he's fascinated that he is going to be living next to this cabin that might be haunted. And it comes back to that question about we as humanity, we are very fascinated with these mysterious and strange and dark and unknown things. Why are we so fascinated by this? Why are we drawn to it?
Well, I think that we're fascinated by the unknown. I mean, I think we're naturally curious creatures, we humans. We're fascinated, and we want to explore. We want to know, to add to our own knowledge. So, in the sense of the mysteries of our own world, we're drawn to those, the unexplained things, but also going back to one of the subjects we touched on in the early part of the conversation, why people like horror fiction. One of the things that we're also fascinated by as humans is death and mortality, because we're mortal creatures. So personally, as a lifelong fan of monsters and horror fiction, I think that we're drawn to horror fiction because it's a safe way to confront our own mortality. And the darker things, both in folk tales and in the real world, like, I don't know, creatures that people are scared of, like bats or like snakes or spiders, things like that. We're fascinated by them because we're a little afraid of them at the same time. And to tie it back to the fiction, if you look at the way Matt is sort of fascinated by Pearl when he first sees her, because clearly he can tell right away that she's not human. I mean, he does, and yet she obviously is a child, and that's fascinating too. So, and he's a writer, so his mind goes off in the direction of asking questions about unknown things anyway, like mine does.
Okay.
So, yeah, to come back to your question, though, I think that we're fascinated by the darkness because we're a little afraid of it, and we like to explore things that we're afraid of. We like to explore the unknown. I mean, I think of all the things in human culture and in human civilization that would not be had we not had explorers in our culture who set out to explore the unknown. So many things wouldn't have been discovered if there weren't people who were willing to go into the darkness and explore it.
I think it's also an explanation for things as well. I mean, having camped out a lot in the East Coast and around the Appalachian Trail over, my younger years, the idea of the Jersey Devil or Sasquatch, or, when you hear a coyote yipping in the distance at night and it's just you sitting around the campfire and you're hearing wind and branches breaking and you're wondering, is something there or is it just, a squirrel or whatever?
Yeah.
And you just don't know. And it just haunts you as you're trying to deal with the day-to-day of trying to get your dinner and get to bed. And you hear these awful things and your mind just runs as to what it could possibly be, And
Absolutely.
I think it's just part of making sense of the world to some extent as well, that, clearly there's this awful thing that's out there and I'm justified in my belief that it's going to get me, or whatever it might be.
And I have to ask, given that you spend a lot of time researching these things, because I'm assuming you research all of this just like most authors do, do you believe that these things are there?
That's a tricky question. I believe there's probably some reality to some folk tales. Like, I believe there's probably some reason for people to think there's a Bigfoot out there in the woods. I believe that it's statistically improbable that we are the only planet that has intelligent life. I just think most of I'm sure there's extraterrestrial life out there somewhere. The reason why they haven't shown up on our doorstep is probably because they're too smart. Probably a little scared of us. Those people need to get those human beings need to get their stuff together a little bit better.
I can see that.
The embassy down here. But yeah, I think there's probably a reality to the underpinnings of a lot of folk legends. I mean, I'm a religious person. I'm a Christian. I believe in God. And to me, if you can believe in the invisible in terms of the divine, then it's easier to believe in the invisible in terms of the folk tales and urban legends, even though I can't put my finger on those. I can't put my finger on God either, but I have faith in him. And
right. Well, where I come down on this is I can't even say how much. I do not want to be the person who says, I think there could be Bigfoot out there, or I think there could be these things. And yet I'm a very logical person, which ironically, I'm possibly the only person who arrives at faith in God by logic, rather than
St.
by
Thomas
faith.
Aquinas did.
Oh, okay.
I'm
right.
I'm that way myself. To me, it makes sense that life didn't start out of nothing. There had to be a creative intelligence behind it. It's too patterned. It's too structured, the way that everything in the cosmos fits together. There had to be a greater intelligence that brought that into being.
Right.
Well,
and so I come to, I bring that same logic to the idea of, say, Bigfoot or any of these folklore, say the flood. Every single civilization has had a flood story. Now, how is that possible unless it actually happened? And there are remnants of people in every civilization who remembered that. But some time ago, we lost our Christmas tree. We had tossed it off the deck. And in April, because in Duluth, where we used to live, mid-April, you still have snow up to your waist. I can attest to that because I sank in it. Wasn't sure how I was going to get out before
we almost lost
mid-June.
our Irish wolfhound too,
Right.
to the same snow.
But anyway, so we tossed the tree off the deck. Eventually the snow melted, which, might have been July 15th. And 2 days later, I know, the tree was gone. And we searched everywhere for that tree. And we had this massive, huge yard off the deck with woods beyond.
And a pond. And I mean, everything else.
We searched the woods. That tree was gone. And I finally started to say, maybe, a bear wouldn't take it away. Our land was so far back that there's no way any man came. And why would a man come and haul away a Christmas tree? So I finally started thinking, what could be in those woods that would take a Christmas tree? Well, Bigfoot's the only thing that came to my mind.
Chupacabra.
And I never believed in... I never believed in Bigfoot, but I was so at a loss that I started doing a lot of research. And the things I found out were fascinating, including the comment that really stuck with me was someone said, yeah, in the big cities, people automatically laugh at the idea of Bigfoot, but out here in the Pacific Northwest, we all know it's there. Like we don't even think twice. We know it's there. We've seen it. We see them all the time. And that shocked me. That really shocked me. But we are unfortunately coming to the end of our time, and there's the musical clock. I don't know if the microphone's picking it up. So where can people find you online?
Facebook is the best place to find me. I'm working on getting I think I told y'all online that my website had some problems. I'm working on getting that back up. But Facebook is the best place to find me. I interact with people on Facebook all the time. My Amazon author page is a good place to check out my books. They have them all there, and you can read samples of everything. And, I'm also on X. I guess I'm also on Goodreads. I have a presence on Goodreads. I have a Pinterest account. But the primary way for readers to reach out and contact me would be on my Facebook or through my Amazon author page.
All right.
That sounds good. And Laura, where can I find you other than right next to me?
Right. Well, since most people aren't sitting right next to me, all of those...
But perhaps they should be.
Right. All of those 10.2 million listeners who are not sitting right next to me or Chris can find us at booksandbrews.net. We do have Books and Brews Lite, which is right now only on YouTube, which is youtube.com/@books and brews spelled out. And you can find a lot more authors there than you'll find on our website. My books and all my activities are at lauravosica.com. You can find our 15 sheep and our rabbits who reproduce like stones at glenmurrellfarms.wordpress.com. You can find our sponsor, Gabriel's Horn Books, at gabrielshornbooks.com. All of these are on Twitter, on Instagram with basically the same spellings.
Do you have any upcoming events?
Right now, the only thing I have event-wise on my schedule is something that I do every year, which is Dragon Con in Atlanta on Labor Day weekend. I'll be there from the Thursday prior to Labor Day through that next Tuesday after Labor Day is over with. And I'll be doing about 9 or 10 panels. I'll be doing a reading or two and a book signing there. It's a great convention, multiple genres, and there'll be a ton of other authors there, celebrities, movies, and stuff. Anyway, it's a good way to reach out to my readers and to talk to people face to face, and it's always a good time every year. So I'll be there. Probably going to try to do some local Knoxville conventions and a couple of bookstore signings in the fall, because not only will Pearl of the Shadows be out, but I have several other books lined up to come out between now and the end of the year.
Definitely keep us posted on those events so that we can also promote them. Yes. And Laura,
I will definitely send you all a copy of Pearl so you can read it.
Yep,
That's
which
great.
is perfect. Do we happen to have any upcoming events other than trying not to get run over either by dogs, rams, or UTVs?
Right, I've been run over by a lot lately.
Yes.
The only thing that we really have going on, I haven't been doing conventions because I'm busy dodging on rams. However, Gabriel's Horn is accepting submissions for their next poetry anthology. These are two of the earlier ones. Faith and Music just came out, and next year's theme is children. So we're looking for...
I actually write poetry in addition to fiction, so I'll probably
fantastic.
send you a...
Yeah, so what we do is we're looking for poetry in classical forms like sonnets, villanelles, triolets, things like that. And we have, I believe we have 6 out already, possibly 5. We're on either our 6th or 7th anthology that's coming out. So we've been doing it every year for a few years, and that's what's next.
And so, do we happen to have a boring or an interesting guest next month, Laura?
I'm sorry to say once again, it's an interesting guest.
Who might that be?
So next month, we are going to be talking with Bill McCormick, who is an award-winning and critically acclaimed author of several novels, graphic novels, and comic book series, and has also appeared in numerous anthologies. He started writing professionally in 1986 for the Chicago Rocker magazine in conjunction with his radio show on Z95, and that's ABC FM, and went on to write for several other magazines and blogs. He wrote a Twisted News and Science blog at worldnewscenter.org. It provided source material for his weekly radio show on WBIG 1280 AM Fox, which aired for 12 years.
Cheers.
Cheers.